So as Coach Holly joined in, hey Holly,
Guys, how are you?
great, great. Let's see. Can you hear me? If anybody, if people has problem hearing us, type it there. I will read it. So Holly, thank you for being here with me this afternoon. It's afternoon,
Yeah.
right? When it's noon.
Yeah.
Um, so I will say very briefly what I found on the internet, okay, that anybody could go and find it about Holly very fast. And then I will let you give you more introduction. So Holly, I looked online, okay, Google, and she said she's short because she's 5'6", which I think that's outrageous because I'm 5'2". I'm short. Uh, she's tall. So she started rowing. I'm talking, and when we say rowing here, we're talking about on the water rowing, okay? We rowing, it's very important for me to say to everybody, the sport of rowing includes erg, but on this talk here, we are focusing a lot on the water, and that's why I wanted to bring Holly here because it's a little new for what erg zone does most of the time. So she started Bowles School in Jacksonville,
Mhm.
9-4, which is so interesting. I'm in Jacksonville, I had no idea about that. We talked
Mhm.
and never knew about it. So I apparently was the first year of rowing at Bowles. That's fun. So then she moved to St. Andrews School. Junior and senior year, she rowed there. And after that, Harvard 4 years for Radcliffe. Did I say it right? Is that how you say that?
Mhm.
Radcliffe?
That's correct.
Heavyweights, which she apparently there was a lot of accomplishment there. And then she finished college, start assistant rowing for that team. From there, she moved to Pinecrest, Fort Lauderdale, and then Ready, Set, Row began.
Hmm.
So I said all of that because, as I said before, a lot of people we brought on live with us so far was very much on the erg, like indoor rowing, because that's how erg zone came to be, like indoor rowing. But we have at this point a lot of coaches from colleges, high schools, or even rowing teams or ski clubs team, ski clubs like in Europe and stuff using erg zone. So because when they are indoors, they see the benefit. And very briefly, and I will stop talking. How I met Holly was 2023. I went to the Women's Coaching Conference in Boston, organized for Maddie. I should bring Maddie live to talk to us, to me too. I think she's great. So that conference for everybody who is on the erg zone community, like indoor community, was for women in rowing, like coaching. So it was a very awesome conference where we could talk to a bunch of other coaches and learn. And I'm not a rowing coach, everybody knows that, but I wanted to connect because it is was a new market for me. I wasn't there to sell Ergzone, but I was there to understand people. But I really wanted to talk to coaches, right, and sell Ergzone, but I didn't. But then I am on the airport. And I'm waiting for my flight, and Holly shows up, and we start talking. I'm like, okay, now I guess now I can sell Ergzone to her. I'm not like invading that space that's for knowing each other to saying selling something. Then we find ourselves opening our laptops, right, Holly? And she's showing me Ready, Set, Row, and I'm showing her Earthzone. And we say, okay, let's work. 2024 was a huge blurb for us, but okay, it's happening now. 2024, five, we're here. So Holly, um, I have a little bit of a list here, just things that I wanted to ask her. So, Holly, for those who don't know you, so share a little bit about yourself, like your background. I kind of covered a bit, but who is Coach Holly?
Yeah. So, first, thanks for having me, Tice. It's great to be here. Um, for most of your audience, who I understand is on the ERG, it is actually very relevant what I do. Even though most of the people that I am coaching are on the water, they are on the water rowers. The ERG is a really critical component for on the water rowers. So it's super relevant what I do, and we'll talk a little bit more about how we're different in terms of on the water coaching. But as you said, I am on the shorter end for a collegiate on the water rower. Let me qualify myself there. So most women who row in college are 5'10" and up. So that is shorter, and as a result of that, you have to, in order to be competitive on those programs, especially on a D1 program or a fast D3 program, you're going to have to, develop the other components that make an athlete great, right? And that includes strength, flexibility, and my personal favorite, right, is this mental fitness piece. And that's why this is very relevant to people who only erg, because you're getting a firsthand look at what it looks like to have to develop that component of your fitness, right, your mental fitness. And so I would say that I was a pretty self-aware athlete, and often shorter athletes in our sport, on the water at least, have to start developing some of those other capabilities and areas of their whole athlete picture, because they're not going to be as tall and they're not going to have as much leverage, right? So they're not going to hit the same numbers necessarily all the time. And so I was developing organically some of those mental skills without even realizing it. And then when I started coaching at Harvard, which was in 2002, I started to put it down on paper. Like, what was I doing that I felt like was giving me the edge to be able to compete against people who are quite a bit taller than I was or stronger than I was. And so I started to try to isolate those and package them and explain them conceptually to other athletes, either other athletes who are shorter or just ones who are struggling, balancing academics, and competing at that high level, so that they could find their place, find their way, right? How could you be the best rower and the best teammate and the best student and the best, all the things they wanted to do? And so it's my sort of coaching style, or me as a coach, started sort of really blossoming right away. That was my first job well, my second job, I guess, out of college, because I did some travel writing right after college. And man, was I lucky. Like I just fell right into that, and it totally changed the course of my entire life. So as a result of seeing that and being able to work with those Harvard athletes, right? Type A, super driven, overwhelmed, overextended, very talented, but really having to balance all of those things on, that they were spending their time on. And that crew did very well, wound up winning NCAA championship, which is the highest that you can do in collegiate. Then it sort of got the wheels turning about, like, this is interesting. Like, I seem to have a good grasp of what this looks like. I think I'm a pretty good communicator. I could empathize with the athletes, and build those trusting relationships so that they would believe me, and I would only ask them to do things that I knew they could do, but were very hard, but I knew they could do. And that's sort of how my type of coaching started. And then I went to Pinecrest, worked with high school students. Only 3 days a week, actually, because I was also catching alligators. That's a separate live talk we can do a different time. I,
Okay.
I was doing other things, right? Because I was an environmental science major, so I thought I was
Yes.
going to go in that field, but I couldn't stay away from the coaching piece. And was quite impactful with those athletes. I still keep in touch with several of them, and that was 2004. So I've been at their weddings or like gone to meet their babies. Like, it's wild. Um, and in that time, I was like, oh, like, I can change people's lives doing this, right? And so
Yes.
it really shifted me to think about that. And then the gap from Pinecrest to starting Ready Set Row was about 10 years. So I did a bunch of things that I thought I was supposed to do with a Harvard degree. And my husband and a close friend sort of were pushing me back into coaching, being like, this is actually where you, like, it's very obvious. This is like a skill and a talent that you have, and you should be, and it makes you happy. So you should be going there. And Ready Set Row was born after looking at a couple other companies that were doing something similar, which is, can I carve away a section of the year to be really full on, like, I'm fully dedicated to that team when I'm there. Like, I leave my own children and husband for the whole
Yeah.
time. And so that's how it started in 2016 was the
Okay.
first year.
Oh, okay. Well, I have one comment about what you said. I love that in the beginning you said erg is relevant for on the water.
Hmm.
Coming from the erg, and I end up going to the water just because I was curious about that. But it was, of course, in a rowing club setting. so it's not going to talk about collegiate or even high school or stuff like that. But it's interesting that how much people perceive the erg as not necessary, especially for masters, on the water. And that's one of the things they say, okay, that's not a torture machine,
Mhm.
that really can help you and all the things. So I love that. And I love that you went back to the coach because that's what I noticed when I went to the conference, how much you like that, like it was very good. I remember you did one of the workshops. It was called Brave Yourself, wasn't it? Is that the
Brave,
name of
yeah.
Brave? You're
Well, so we
2K,
use
kind of.
yeah, so we use bravery is like one of the core fundamental character strengths that we focus on, right? And the definition that we use for bravery is doing something even when you're scared.
Yeah,
So, rowing is scary, right? Like really, like racing is scary. Going out there for a paddle or like stopping to look at the birds is not really that scary. But if you're racing, it is scary. And if it's not, then go harder.
yeah,
Like it should be. You should be going hard enough, whether on the erg or on the water, that there should be a moment when you're like, ooh, I might not be able to maintain
yeah,
this. And that's scary, right? It's vulnerable. So we focus on that. And we'll talk about this, I know, later, but that's sort
yeah.
of how we integrate the character strength piece through sport.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think it's amazing. Like, but I said that because it's the change of what is it, change of careers, I guess. And
Hmm.
I understand that. Like, I'm a software developer and I love it, and I would still do it if I had the time. But now I found like I guess a calling with Ergzone, and I could run the business and feel like okay, I can help so much more people doing that.
Hmm.
So yeah, well, I'm glad you are doing the coaching. So, okay, so then you went from the Pinecrest and Ready, Set, Row came to be, right?
Hmm.
So, when, we know kind of when, but how that happened, that transition of,
Yeah.
like, so I was like, okay.
Yeah. So ironically, I had my second child in 2014. I was working for a private equity firm right before that. And it's just the financial crisis happened. There was a bunch of environmental things that were happening that shifted that. And then I had my second child, and they were only 20 months apart. So I was in the newborn tunnel. And I met a woman who was going to take my newborn photos, who had a Triangle Run Club sticker on the back of her car. And I tell this because it's quite funny. And I was like, "Ooh, does your daughter row?" And she was like, "Yes, she does. She just started. She came from swimming." And I was like, "Excellent. I will trade you erg coaching for these newborn photos," because they were expensive.
I
And
know.
so and so we did. And I worked with that athlete who has since graduated. She's in medical school now. Anyway, I worked with her, I don't know, 4 or 5 times maybe. And then her mom sent me the photos. So it was a great trade at the time. But it allowed me to see like, oh, I am really good at this, right? She dropped like 25 seconds off her 2K. She got a scholarship offer to row in college, and she rowed for 4 years and now is in med school. So um, it was sort of serendipity there that happened like that. But that got me thinking like, oh, maybe I don't have to. I knew if I went back to coach collegiate or even high school, I would never see my husband and kids again, right? Because I know how to make them really fast, and it requires a coach to really invest. And this is why it's so tricky. For me, it requires me to really invest myself
Hmm.
and my time. And if I did it year round, I'd never be home.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I can't do that. So I'm going to have to figure out how to do this. And so I did a summer indoor only training at my CrossFit in 2015. I think there were like 25 kids who came in and out. They were on vacation and this, that, and the other thing, right? So they came in 2 week blocks. I
Hmm.
hired my CrossFit trainer to do some strength, core, flexibility, injury prevention with them 2 days a week, and I erged with them 3 days a week. And the kids loved it. And that allowed me to start putting pen to paper around the mental skills pieces. Like, I want you thinking about yourself. What are your strengths as an athlete? Where are your opportunities for growth? What are the things that you've identified that are obstacles for you to get the next level, whether that's physical, mental, emotional, whatever. um, I basically started, without realizing it, building my curriculum there in
Hmm.
2015, and it was all on the erg in the summer, and with no air conditioning, so the kids had great mental
Awesome.
toughness training. And those athletes came back and were like, "That was awesome, and we want to row with you on the water," right? Because they were on the water
Uh-huh.
rowers from the local club,
Uh-huh.
and I was like, "Great." except we don't really have great water in North Carolina. So I can't do that. And so that's when I started looking like who is doing this. And at the time, there was a summer camp that had been around for quite some time. It isn't now, but it was called Southeast Juniors. They were at a boarding school. They trained for 2 weeks and went to the summer nationals. And I was like, interesting,
Uh-huh.
maybe I could do this. And so I called
Oh,
my high school, St. Andrews in Delaware, and was like, I want to run a summer camp and I need your water in your dorms and your dining hall. And
oh,
they
okay.
said great, and that's how it happened in 2016.
Oh, that's how the camps came to be.
Mhm.
Oh, that's awesome. So you see someone and like, okay, yeah, that's I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. I am actually, I may be jumping my gun saying that, but my kids go to school and they are so young, like right near nine. So the middle schoolers that are going to be the oldest, and we're talking about clubs, and I'm like, oh, I really wanna do a rowing club with the older kids. So I have a few concept too. Can I bring it here? So it'd be all free and all the things. And the coach said, "Oh, I love this. Can you put them in the water?" I'm like, just calm down. Uh, let's put them on the earth first.
Yeah.
Then we're gonna talk about how the transition. But I love that you said that because that now is my mind now. Who can work with those kids if they go? Because I'm sure most of those kids never thought about being on the water.
Hmm. Hmm.
So like then I'm like, oh, if you can bring that passion to them, they're doing basketball clubs, volleyball clubs, like my kids are running clubs. So I'm like, why not
Right.
rowing? Let's bring the ergs here, and get like the movement coming.
Right.
Awesome. So we had here like saying I was going to ask you like if how your journey evolved, but I guess we kind of covered about
Mhm.
it, right? And that you're passionate about like helping people and you really understand that like you get like you're good about communicating the
Mhm.
things. Um, so I think you covered a little, but do you want to say anything about more about the what makes Ready Set Row different from other rowing
Yeah,
like training programs out there?
absolutely. So this is really critical. So we are the only camp and programs that I have found that fully integrate the character building opportunities through the sport into the programming. Okay, so building those character strengths are like the underbelly of our program. We do not teach anything where we don't talk about these things. And the reason for that is because rowing is by far, in my opinion, the easiest medium by which people can learn those skills with no repercussions. Like nothing is going to happen. If you go out really hard on a 6K erg and you blow up, nothing is going to happen. You're fine. Like, no, you're not going to lose your job. You're not going to, breach someone's confidence or trust, or like when you get into the real world working or at school and you take high risks like this, like that is not the time to figure out what your core character strengths are, right? But on the erg, especially on the erg, like this is your time. Nothing is going to happen. Just you can't find your limits unless you go to the limit and try to pass the limit, right? If you hit the target every time, you are by definition not at your limit. So that is very interesting to me. And I try to, and this is why you did ask me, what's the difference between the rowers and the ergs. And this is part of that. The rowers um, see the erg as a punishment.
Hmm.
And that is totally incorrect. Like that mindset is never going to serve them. It is a training tool, an incredibly useful training tool, and it is the easiest place for them to build their mental fitness. And we see that a really great rower and great rowing includes technical fitness, physical fitness. That's like literally how strong and, your endurance, and then mental fitness.
Hmm.
And all three of those are required to be a really great rower. If you're missing one, you are not going to be as good as you could be. And so we're the only program that understands this and then fully integrates these three things, right? So we will, at our camps and clinics, we will teach a character strength or an RSR mental skill, we call them, and then do a workout that allows them to practice that on the erg,
Okay.
right? So they're fully integrated. So it's not just conceptual and like in this pie in the sky and 10,000 feet view of what you need to be doing. It's like, here's a mental skill that can help you reach, reach to your limit on any given day. Now here's a workout that we've designed for you to practice that mental skill. So we learn, then we practice, then we execute. Okay, that's how all of our programs work. We'll learn the concept, practice it, and then execute. And then once they've executed it, then we add pressure, right? So we make it harder.
Okay.
Either we change the information that they have, we change the timing that they're going to do it, we change the intensity of that. It doesn't matter. We can. There's a variety of ways we can do that, but that's how you build competence in those athletes, and then the competence yields confidence.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how all of our programs are designed.
I love that. I do. And I think, and again, I had a very little experience with the on the water rowing to really compare much, but I do think there is a lot of pressure on the erg. You know, when you're in a boat with a lot of other people or you're outside, you're doing element, just by being with a lot of other people rowing together, you feel like you may feel empowered by that,
Hmm.
right? But on the erg, you are on yourself and perhaps someone else is rowing with you, but there is so much pressure. I see it. You know, we have top athletes on the erg that are indoor rowers, like that's their sport. And you see, like, there is so much pressure, right? So, like, how much pressure does all the kids you ever coached felt like before the 2K? You know, the 2K day, or like college, it also do a 6K, right? So, like, isn't like the most so much stress that it's like
Yeah,
how do you handle that?
yeah.
I can't handle it. I should train with you because I
You need to
can't
come to
handle
our
it.
camp,
I
Tice.
know. I'm actually really thinking about it because I can't. I say I love it, but I'm not a person that I just can't. I did CrossFit, and I remember every day when the workout of the day would start, and I need to go to the restroom. You know, like there is that moment of like I need that, like just mental. Okay, so okay, let's talk about the coaching you offer. So we're talking about the camps, which is literally this thing that you came from. Okay, those kids that were coaching indoor and they wanted to go to the water and you found a way to do that and you do it right now, so you offer the camps, which is something completely new for our audience. So when you think about ready set row, and I think we mentioned this a lot because you were very much on that sphere of the younger generation, right? High schoolers and college, or high schoolers, I guess, trying to get to college. Is that
That's right.
a lot of the mentality, right?
Hmm.
So you want to break them so they get there. So, but also that is you're bringing the camps to the masters as well. So I
Yeah,
know you
so
did one.
so
Um,
we do summer camps and then winter camps right now. So the summer camps, we have our racing camp. That's the RSR Elite for boys and girls. It's about 45 to 50 kids on both sides, and that's a hard camp. Those are athletes who have visions of rowing in college. Okay. And then this year we're adding the dev team, which is about 20 girls. These are still high school or early college who maybe can't or aren't ready for the elite squad, but they'll still be able to do all of our mental skills, right? Which is every other day for an hour in a classroom setting. It's like school.
okay.
um, and then we have the RSR Foundation Camp, which is July 19th to 24th. It's right after elite. That is still age 14 and up. That is just a week. So it's like the Cliff Notes version of our mental skills and high focus on technical. And then in the winter, we offer a 2K clinic, which to date has only been high school. It wouldn't have to be, but to date it's only been high school, right? Because the high school kids are they're really thirsty to get materials to help them with that 2K test for collegiate
Yes.
recruiting. And then this year we were in Austin, Texas, where we did open that to masters. And so that is 4 days. We were at the Austin Rowing Club. It was awesome. Again, short snippets of RSR mental skills, targeting towards people who are going to be training some on the erg in the winter. So those specific mental skills that would serve them to train through the winter. Um, and so those were the winter camps. And then we're looking to expand those. It gets a little tricky from a timing perspective,
Sure.
like when is a good time for people to do that? But, and then I go to clubs. So 3 or 4 a year, I will go to those clubs rather than having all those athletes have to fly to wherever we are and do the mental skills. And if they want to do deep dive on the technical side, because we do break it down a little bit differently than a lot of on the water coaches do, then I bring my elite coaches with me to that.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I knew some of that, but I still need every time I sit down and I look at the list, I'm like, oh wow, there is a lot here. So what are the
Mhm.
cover? Because one of the things that we tried to do, but timing was crazy. I was in Europe, we couldn't put it on, but it's kind of like offer a way for people to sign up for some of those clubs on Orgzone too. So our our community, let's say that, like people who are used to see what's new on Erg Zone can have that because I think a lot of people would benefit. I love the winter like timing there because there is a lot of like indoor rowing, indoor championship just
Hmm.
happened. It's usually end of February, so people are coming down to that. So I know by the time they get to winter. So your winter was December, right?
Hmm.
Your camp. So
Hmm.
I know by when they get there, they're probably already on the throes of it, because they've been training to get to peak on this February-ish.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
the mental thing about it is
Hmm.
awesome because you can never you're training all your body to kind of perform on that level, but then like is your head kind of stopping you? Everybody talks about that 3/4. Do you agree? That's not on our things that I asked you before, but do you agree that 3/4 of is where you hit the wall? Like when you get to that 75% that you say, oh, I cannot do that. And that's when it's almost like labor when the doctor, I don't know if the doctor told you, but the premise is like, oh, when it's gonna happen is when you're gonna say to me, I can't
Hmm.
do that. And that's when I know, okay, that baby's gonna be here
Yeah, yeah,
like soon. Is
yeah. I
is
think
that it?
I may have blocked out the birthing comparisons, but yes. So I actually just did an Instagram reel about this, of like
Okay.
2 tips about the third 500, right? So at Ready Set Row, if anyone wants to go back, and I think we've had a lot of people actually looking at that. So we have a whole lesson on building a 2K race plan for anyone who does any of our programs and specific tactics, right? So when we do the mental skills, the way I try to explain this to people, it's as if I've laid out a buffet table and put all of these weapons on the table. And you're going to war. Pretend you're like a knight,
Yeah.
right? And you get to go up to the table and you get to pick up which kind of armor you want to put on. Some will fit you and some won't. And that's
Mhm.
fine, but you want to pick it up, the one that looks the most interesting to you, put it on, try it out, right? Perform and try it out and see if that's something that works for you. And if it doesn't, put it back and try something else. That's sort of how we do that. So anytime anyone, master's, junior, college, it doesn't matter. And by the way, the conversations are all the same.
Sure.
It doesn't matter how old they are. Everyone asks me the same questions. When someone tells me that they have a quote barrier, it means they don't have a tool. Okay? So if someone says the third 500 is the barrier, well, that's because you don't have a plan for how you're going to manage the third 500. It is going to be physiologically probably one of the hardest parts of a 2K race. But if you plan it differently, it could not be, right? So if you negative split your 2K, it isn't actually. So it sort of depends on how people
Hmm.
prepare for that and what armor that they're wearing. Um, so yeah, so I worked last spring with the Texas women, the collegiate team, and it was really great to watch that. There were a handful of athletes that negative splitted those 2Ks, and I was like, this is awesome
Okay.
to see this at this
Okay.
speed. Like these women are really fast on the erg.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and so it depends. If you have a race plan where you're coming through the halfway point slower than your target on purpose, then
Of
you're
course.
only doing and then you're on purpose, right?
Yeah.
That's the key.
Yes.
And you have to do the preparatory work and collect the data to feel confident about where that should be. This is not done in a vacuum, right?
Right.
That's a big error people make. So if you do it on purpose, where you're like a split or a split and a half off coming through the halfway, you can hit it if you had the data and you knew where to start,
Yeah.
right? And so then it's very exciting to watch people on the erg. They're just ripping a 1K and they did this like warm up right before it,
Uh-huh.
right? Which is the other 1K consecutively with no rest.
Yeah.
So it's
Oh,
not
yeah.
exactly like a warm up, but that's how
Uh-huh.
I would think of it, right? When
Okay.
I do something that's a negative split, like I think this is the warm up, and now I'm going to rip a 1,000 meter piece instead of I have to do a 2,000 meter piece, right? There's all sorts of mental
Yeah,
tools
yes,
here.
I like
Mhm.
that. I I like that. That's interesting. And I agree with you. I feel like I feel even if a plan, I would say that there is a time on every single hard workout I do that I feel like, oh gosh, I gonna die at the end. It's just like because I have puked a couple of times and I'm like, okay, I don't wanna surpass that limit, where you feel sick. But I agree that you need to have a plan. And some of the things that's why I love the erg zone, like erg zone marketplace is a big part for us, for erg zone because is where we tell people connect to coaches. You know, a lot of people can manage to row in, let's say, on their highest without any coaching. Maybe they have had coaches. You know, especially they are athletes in the past, maybe runners or something else. They kind of learned a lot about themselves. So someone most of the time helped them in the past, so they almost can translate it right now for what they do now. But everybody can benefit from having a coach, you know, like, or having a plan to do all those things. That's hard. I need it, even if for my daily workouts. I don't like to get random stuff on the internet
Hmm.
and say, I'm gonna do this. I want a plan, even if it's not like crushing my 2K. I love that. So, okay, focus a lot of mindset we're talking about, as well as physical training. And I think we covered why is that important, right? Is there anything else? I don't think. Do you want to add about that?
I think just, it should be hard. It should be hard. It is hard. And that's awesome. And
Yes.
so it's just what we're doing when we build those mental schools skills is we're building a toolkit. So everyone that leaves the program feels like, okay, I have three things that now are going to help me navigate this obstacle that I know is coming. Like we spend the time in the program to identify what those things are. And here is how I'm going to navigate them when I hit them. And so there's no surprise. There's no uncertainty there. Like you're aware that that's going to happen. Um, and then it's the same on the water or on the erg. There's no difference, right? The only reason on the water rowers hate the erg is because the erg's giving them the data every stroke that they're not on target, right?
I love
And
that.
that is really hard. And the reason, or my worry about people who only erg, not worry, I guess, just the opportunity for growth for someone who only ergs is that the erg is it's stationary.
Hmm.
I mean, there are other versions, right? But let's just go with the concept two without
Yes.
flappers, okay? So it is stationary. And as a result, you can hit, particularly if you're doing short pieces, splits that aren't the best. You're not using the most efficient and the best physiological mechanics to hit those
Yes.
splits, and it doesn't penalize you for it, versus on the water it will, right? There are
Yeah.
things you need to do on the water to make a boat go fast, and you don't necessarily have to do those on the erg to hit a good split on the erg. And specifically, for your masters athletes who are doing a decent amount of volume on the erg, it's your center core, right? So we're talking, I know we're not talking about babies this whole time, but it's going to come
No,
back right
sorry.
now. So when your transverse abdominals, right? These are the ab muscles that go across. They're behind your rectus abdominis, which is the six pack abs in the front. So the transverse abdominals come across, and your pelvic floor, all of that sort of center core muscles, you can physically erg on a rowing machine and not engage those muscles. And you can't really on the water, or it's much harder because you're having to balance on the water. The boat is moving, right? So you're trying to feel, how can I put as much force through my hands to the footboards against the blade and match them, right? Match them. The blade, the force on the blade has to match your hands, which matches your footboard. If it doesn't, it means some part of your body is not locked in, and now it's absorbing that force, and it's not going to translate to boat
Hmm.
speed, right? But on
Hmm.
the erg, there's no feedback loop like that, right? So people can just sit there and like shoot their tail and not brace their center core and do all these things that I just watch, particularly in a
I know.
CrossFit gym, and I'm like, oh Lord, please don't do that anymore. Like your QL, that tiny little muscle in your lower back, is screaming like, stop, 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 because they're not using their glutes and their posterior chain, right? They're not bracing their center core. So on ErgZone, that's why we gave you the center core video.
Yeah.
There is a center core video that I built with my Pilates instructor that has totally changed as now that I'm retired from college rowing. Like all I do is erg. I do like the head of the Charles without practicing. That's it
Uh-huh.
in the water. So my indoor rowing has totally changed once I started doing Pilates after my two kids. And I was like, oh, this is because the erg doesn't signal to you that you haven't braced your center core, and you have to transfer the
Hmm.
force correctly the whole time, right? And it protects you from injury. So that's the biggest difference in terms of what you miss when you only erg
Yeah.
and you don't row on the water, I
No,
think.
no, no. Yeah, I agree with you. I actually had problems in the back because I didn't know. I was trying my best, but you know, you just like I think over years you just don't sit right.
Mhm.
You don't walk right, so you will not move necessarily right on the machine either. So I like those, I guess, supplemental, is that a word I'm
Supplemental,
looking
yeah.
for? Like work that you can do to kind of get stronger, but not to the point that you can just yank that chain out of the erg, but you can move more efficiently. One other reason why I like coaching, not because only translates on the number you see on the erg, but that you're really conscious about every stroke. And that's one of the things that I row looking at my drive length on erg zone, and I know my drive length at this point tells me a lot of times when I'm messing. I mean, the power curve too, and my curve is not absolutely great. And I think it's because I'm short, but that's another problem. Like, like I don't have those beautiful, anyway, I can't put that power, but I look at some numbers that I know if I'm not hitting that,
Hmm.
it's almost like I'm really messing up, and tends to be towards the end of the workout when you're already tired
Hmm.
and you're probably like losing all the your mental capacity to kind of really do it consciously. So you just need to train your body to do it like naturally, like, right? So like
Yeah,
breathing, you
and you
don't have
have
to think about it.
yeah, you have to have cues to tell yourself, right? So the easiest, without looking at anyone, I can tell you, no one will go slower in their last. You talked about the third 500 from the third. That's if that's the hardest part from the third 500 on. If they think sit up, push with your legs, they will not go slower, right? Sit up, keep the chest up, collarbone up, so they don't start going like this.
Hmm.
And push with the posterior chain, then they will go faster.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. So, what's a common mistake rowers, well, I guess, making their training,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
how
So
to fix it?
this
Is
is
that, yeah, that's,
this is what I think will be the most helpful for your viewers. So the rowers, as I said, see the erg as a punishment, right? And it is not. Um, it needs to be, they need to shift their mindset. And that's one of the things we do at our camps and clinics is this is an opportunity. You have an able body, or even if you don't have an able body, we got modifications. So it's such a great sport. This is an opportunity for you to, build your physical and mental and technical fitness. All three of those things need to be done on the erg every time you're on there. And so I think that rowers assume you have to sit down and just rip it all the time. And that's not what you should be doing. Like you need to have a plan that breaks this down. When it's time to go, you go. And when it's time to not go and do something else, you do that too, right? Um, and so that piece, a lot of on the water rowers, when they shift to the erg, they have some preconceived ideas about what numbers they should be hitting, or they have some expectations, or someone else gives them some expectations, right? And they let perfect be the enemy of good. If it's not totally perfect, then like they can't stand this whole thing, and it becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy that they just can't seem to get their heads wrapped around using the erg. The erg is an excellent training tool, and if you and all the people that say I can row but I can't erg, I'm like garbage. You're gonna have to figure out how to do this because even if you don't care, they should, but even if they don't care about their erg time, if you're on the water rower, unless you're rowing a single all the time, you have teammates around you, right? And rowing's built on trust. On the water rowing is built on trust. If you don't have trust in the people around you and they don't have trust, you don't have to like them, but you have to trust them and respect them. And the most trust I see built in teams is on the erg because you want to do something really hard, right? This is why um, this is this is not new to this is not an RSR thing, right? This is like how the military works. This is how everyone knows that connection is built through vulnerability, and in a
Mhm.
team dynamic, the vulnerability comes from doing something really hard together. So you have hard workouts. We teach an acceptance policy or a mental skill where it's like, yeah, this is going to be hard, and you can do it. So it's not yeah, this is going to be hard. Oh God, I ate a burger and like I didn't sleep last night and I took two tests today. Like that's what happens. So we train them to not do that. We
Mhm.
train them to look at it, accept that they're going to do it, right? They've made a choice. They're willingly doing this. They have an able body to do this. Sit down, say, yeah, it's going to be hard. Look over, give a fist pump to the person next to you and be like, we got this. And now we lock in, right? That's sort of the mistake for the on the water rowers is like the greatest opportunity to build trust, which is the foundation of team cohesion, in my
Yeah.
opinion, for on the water rowing, is on the erg. And then for ergers, as I said before, You also don't want to just sit down and yank it, right? Maybe you don't have to worry about trust because you're not in like a team dynamic, but it is trust in self,
Yes.
right? So, yeah, you're going to do some hard things. I wouldn't do a really hard erg every day. Like, plan when you're going to do it, manage yourself so that you know it's coming, recognize that it's going to be hard, and you've prepared to do this, and sit down and make it happen. Like, execute that, right? And if it's too hard, if you bail, or not even if you stop, but if you like shut down, then you have to back it off. Like, I tell all my people who are struggling with the erg, it's like you're a train, and if the train starts out from the station too fast, that then it has to slow down, it's never going to get to the destination. I would much rather it start slower and move at a consistent rate to reach the station. And if
Hmm.
you have to row like that for 6 months before you can do something hard, fine, do that.
Hmm.
But every time, but you need to like log the time to provide evidence to yourself that you can do these hard things. Then you can make it a little
Uh-huh.
harder. But when people make the jump to something that's too hard, and then they provide evidence to themselves that they cannot do it, like that's hard. That's much harder.
Yeah.
I would rather them consistently show evidence that they can do this thing. So if that means you lower the bar, then that's what you do. It's like I read about this stuff all the time, Tice. You can tell I'm like super nerdy about this stuff, but how they train, I'm not a supporter of this, but how they train dolphins and things in those
Okay.
parks. Hopefully they're all gone soon.
Uh-huh.
I think they are, but I read about how they do that, right? And it's because the dolphin's just swimming in the tank, and they put a bar in the tank, and every time the dolphin accidentally swims over the bar, they blow the whistle and then they feed the dolphin. And so then the
Okay.
dolphin starts
Oh.
noticing, like, oh, every time I've swum over this yellow bar, I get they blow this whistle, which means I get snacks.
Uh-huh.
And then they just keep raising the bar, and now it's out of the water, and now the animal's jumping out of the water,
Got
right?
it.
So the analogy is relevant
Yes,
because
yes.
the people have already put the bar out of the water, right? And the athlete on the erg is trying to swim up to the top and is like, yo, I can't get out of here to jump over this thing. And like, yeah, because you haven't provided yourself the evidence that you can do this in the water
Yeah,
first.
and confidently,
Absolutely.
right? Because maybe you
Absolutely.
can get there, but I see my kids playing other sports, and now I look at them. My son was playing flag football, and I saw he going for the flag for the kid, and I know when I'm like, he's not making it because when his brain tells him you won't get it, I'm
Hmm.
like, you are getting it, just keep going. But about the confidence that you get there,
Hmm.
so you get slower, and yeah, and I think naturally, the way we create our zone and the way workouts can be organized is fast to facilitate that. A lot of people say, I don't know if you had the chance to look, but if you, for instance, create a 2K workout on Orgzone,
Hmm.
Ergzone automatically tries to suggest you break into splits. So it's gonna be 500 meters with no rest, right?
Okay.
Continuously. But then you can see the progression, like so maybe you don't want to see that during the race. I don't know. I would like to because so that I have a plan where to change, or maybe I would even break differently. But kind of yes, you collect the data as those checkpoints, right? So
Hmm.
to see not only if you are on that mark, but if you're progressing. There are some people that can fly and die. I think that's what
Hmm.
the ERG community call that. But a fly and die doesn't work most of the time or for most people, right? So,
Yeah.
or yeah, well, I mean, you fly and die, you still finish the workout, but how many times you're really gonna get to where you want it? I feel like sometimes if you do that, you probably could even go further, right? So
I have
you
seen people pull impressive times with that strategy. By the way, we never call it that. We call it fly and fight,
fly and fight.
because if you're committed, you're
Yeah.
committed. So I don't even use the word
Uh-huh.
die. Like, that's not
Uh-huh.
happening, right?
Yeah.
I need them to show. And we've had kids who go out too hard. Usually I tell them a split and they're like, yeah, I can go faster than that. I'm like, okay, I haven't seen any data to support that you can go faster than this. Go ahead.
Show me.
And then they don't do
Yeah.
it. So you can. I personally believe that is the most ferociously uncomfortable way to do a 2K, but some people do that. Some people do.
Yeah. No,
Not
yeah.
as many, but
And
they can.
that's it, right? There are some people that will do things that no most of other people will never do. So we don't know how to identify them. They're out there, but again, if it's not working for you, maybe it's not the correct
Yeah.
way. So let's talk about a little bit of like you coming through our zone, as I said, we met and we felt like a way that there is like a way we meet in the middle there that I thought was beneficial to bring your expertise to the to the indoor community, let's say that, or not. Like, a lot of other people right now on Erg Zone is on the water, or even like younger that are looking for other ways to train. So we have right now live three training plans that you have. Actually, the fourth one is going live today. So we have a 2K 6 weeks that you called for beginner and intermediate, right?
Hmm.
Then a 2K 6 weeks for intermediate advanced. We also had for the same population, intermediate advanced, 12 weeks, and then a 9 weeks, 30 minutes. So tell me a little bit, just so people understand if they went there and look, the beginner intermediate, what we were talking about,
Yes.
and then intermediate advanced.
Yeah. So these plans, I worked really closely with Linda Muri. For anyone who knows, all my masters are probably like, oh, like she's the real deal. Multi-world champion, was the Harvard lightweight men's coach for over a decade. She's amazing. And she has coached several Olympians. So I sent her some of the workouts that I absolutely wanted, and she and I worked really closely to build those plans. And we've had over 150 athletes who did those plans in 2020, actually, when they were in their garage. So I know these work.
Mm.
I have the data to show you that these work. And we basically created an intermediate, advanced, and then a beginner intermediate, because we started with the intermediate, right? That's usually intermediate advanced is what most of our clientele. And then we had a bunch of athletes who'd only rode like a season. And
Okay.
I thought, or they're younger, right? They're like 14, 13. And I thought, 6 day a week is a lot for a younger athlete. And so the beginner one tones down some of the workouts a little, right? And most of them are set up in a way where if you just don't want to do the last set, I say in the video, just don't do the last set. It's fine. Like
Okay.
you don't
Okay.
have to do that. Um, and it gives you a day off on both of them, but it gives you two cross trainings in the beginner and one cross training in the intermediate advanced, right? Because we do believe that swimming, cross country skiing, other things like move the body, move the heart. The heart doesn't know the difference, in a different way, just to save your back and sort of your sanity a little bit. And so someone who has a little bit of rowing experience, not they don't need a ton, but that beginner intermediate, and they could always drop a section or adjust it in there. The RSR Boathouse is our membership community and has the videos that I produce. So basically, when we did this in 2020, when we built these frantically, when we saw that the whole world was shutting down, I made videos where I went through the whole warm up. I explained the whole workout, and then we set it to music and on the water footage so people weren't so bored in their garages, and basically coxed all of those
Okay.
workouts that are on Thursday, the aerobic thresholds. And all of those videos are in the Boathouse. And we're going to open that to masters within the next year. So everyone just reach out if you want in on that, because it's really fun. The way we ran it before was we ran it through a gym in Vancouver that was doing a live leaderboard. So all of my people in the garage logged on and could race each other, which was
Yeah.
so cool.
Mm-hmm.
So those two were 6 weeks. And the reason we have the 12-week one is because we had 35 athletes who said, I want to keep going. I want to do this for 12 weeks. And we were like, oh, so 2 weeks into the 6 week intermediate, the workouts start to shift, right? To give you more time and a later peak to do the 2K. So those
Okay.
workouts are designed for someone who's trying to drop time on a 2K test piece. And so the 12-week is definitely an intermediate or more advanced race plan
Oh,
or
okay.
training plan for race plan. And then the one that we're just finishing is for a 30-minute test. So that is very
Okay.
common to see in a college program in the fall, right? So people who are doing the fall. We could have done it for the 6K. I just felt like the 30-minute, I was seeing it more and more and more as a threshold workout for the college programs. And so there are rate caps for the first 10, then the second 10, and the third 10 minutes of that. And so that is an 8-week training plan that's building towards someone really understanding how to pace through a
A
30
30
minute
minutes.
erg test. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's good. I think that's awesome. I think that could even benefit a lot of on the indoor rowing. A lot of people talk about the 5K, but you still benefit, right? So if you get ready for 6K, you for sure will know how to translate it to 5K and gonna
Yeah.
see the benefit.
So
It's a longer workout
yeah.
anyways, not a 2K.
Yeah, so the 30-minute, and it also just breaks it up a little, like it sort of gets a little monotonous to just do 5K or 6K all the time. That's and I like the fact that it's time, right? It's sort of that's a different mental skill when you know that the harder you go, you're still going to be on that thing for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So so that's the other reason we did that time. And so the workouts will ask you to identify the split you should be targeting based off a 2K, 5K, or
Yes, yes.
6K. And what I can tell you is if someone doesn't have any, then they can just sit down and do one and just start. Like there's no
Hmm.
harm. And then you just, if you're like, oh, that wasn't that hard, just go a little
Yeah.
faster, right? Raise the bar a little bit. If you do only have a 2K, then generally 5 to 8 splits is a 6K for most people. And then a 5K is usually one less than a 6K. So they can back into that
Okay.
if they only have one of those
Yeah.
tests.
And again, and when someone gets it's not uncommon for people to start a training plan on Horizon and do it again. So then it's almost like if you didn't know where to start, at least now you know what it is, and then because then you're not just doing a random thing, but you know where you're going, even though if it's the same workout that you did once upon a time, you know where you're going with that. I love that. So okay, so I guess we answered the other question would be like you can have like a 2K, a 5K.
Mhm.
Those times do help for you to kind of gauge where you're doing. Um, okay, so I know before, and I love to talk, so we will talk later about the videos they're saying that you're opening for masters because it has everything to do with ErgZone, because there is a way for ErgZone for people to follow along videos on
Mhm.
ErgZone. It is beta. I would say that it's not necessarily beta, but there is a lot of things that we can improve. But there is so many areas on our zone that we always, as a team, look and say we can improve before getting to videos, or how we do. Because like matching video, like is different than you're looking at YouTube and looking at the rowing as you're
Right.
doing. But once you put everything inside one app, people start seeing, oh, it's lagging here, it's whatever, like it starts to mismatch.
Yeah.
So, but it works. We have some of the things, and I would love to show you later. But and I think there is people who would love that, kind of follow those things. Um, Now that you know Oregon, I think like you had those plans before, right? And you offered on the platform. And then like, how do you see it changing now that you have the Oregon, like because we get a little more data? How do you see that the benefit that people do use
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Well, I think already got a few people who've already bought it, and I think we just put them up there like a month ago, didn't we? So that was nice.
Yes.
Yeah, so we used, I think it was TrackLead in 2020 when we started with those, and um, it does not program the erg for you. So you have a pretty tremendous room for human error.
Hmm.
And that basically became a deal breaker for coaches being able to see the data at the micro level that we wanted to see it. Because they inevitably the athletes put it in differently or wrong, and then you can't compare the things. Like it's all over the place. And we had so many athletes, 150, that it was almost like worse to see it that way because it was so confusing. So that and these are pretty, they're not complicated, but they're intentional with rest and changing splits. Like I'm doing that. My plans are designed to lower the mental fatigue as much as possible. Right? On the really hard workouts, I'm going to try to make this as easy for you to just execute and focus on your effort and your technique and not like convincing yourself to continue to do it, right? I'm either going to change the rate, I'm going to change the time of the piece, I'm going to give you a little break, not a long one, but a little one just to have like a reset and get a little dopamine that like I finished that set. Now I'm on to the next one, right? It's these are all skills that are building through the program plans. And so when the erg can be programmed for you, that is huge because it is so annoying to program an erg the way we've written some of these.
Yes.
Um, so that is really, really great. And then that allows people to compare over time, right? If they're not measuring it to if they have these goals of improvement and they're not measuring, then you can't see that you're getting faster
Or-
at those things. And so
Yeah.
That's a really huge benefit for people to use.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, more as more people use it, I guess we will you have even more data. So we know I know it. Like it's almost like on my gut. I know why I did. Like we created that. And I didn't create Ergzone. Ergzone did not come from this huge study we did and like, okay, this is missing. It's almost like, okay, it sucked to deal with the machine.
Hmm.
Let's figure this out.
Hmm.
And then as we see more and more things that can improve and people asking for things they would like to do, I'm like, yeah, let's just like streamline this process. And yeah, I am addicted for the data. It's not even like, it's just also to keep like what makes you today when it's a hard day, sit down on the erg and do the piece, what gives you, what makes you move. Doesn't matter. It's
Hmm.
not even erg. I'm talking about just general. What makes you in a hard day, go there and do what you're supposed to do. Like if you have a purpose, I feel like you keep going
Hmm.
instead of, oh, I will do it tomorrow. We know how tomorrow works. Like
Hmm.
it's gonna be 15 days in, and you're like, it's always like next year. How about like next January? Um, I love this. So I think we covered the area. I had a question for you about like bringing the camps, and I would love to and keep talking more. Especially later. Maybe you can talk specifically about the camp when you have that open, so people really understand what the camps are, so they can join. Because I think a lot of uh, our rowers would love that. It's something that they never heard about.
Hmm.
So they know about virtual competitions. They know about going to Europe for the World Indoor Rowing Championship, but really getting together with other people like-minded, that perhaps strictly row on the erg, how that can be, would be super cool. So we are almost kind of getting at the end, I guess, like talking about a little bit of community engagement. So I said, like, I know you foster because you have your community, the boat house, right?
Hmm.
Uh, it's strong. So I guess you answer this, how you keep them motivated is like because you have like a very good plan and you know what it is and the mental like part of it. Is
Yeah,
that
I
good,
mean,
right?
people, this is maybe the most frequently asked question of me. I think people say, they'll ask me, how do I stay so motivated? Or they'll ask me, how do I get the athletes, or how are the athletes so motivated? And what I encourage people to do is stop using that word, because it sounds like it's sort of like Instagram, where everything looks so great and they
I
have no
know.
problems,
Yeah.
right? And that's not actually true. Like, I just definitely remember walking down to the boathouse in college where I was like, not seriously, but the thought crossed my mind that like if I stepped out in front of this car and broke my leg, I wouldn't have to do the erg workout
Yeah,
this
yeah.
afternoon. Like it was that I wasn't psyched to be going down to the boathouse every day. And so the word we use for our athletes is committed,
Committed. Okay, I love that. Yes.
because I am not motivated. Right now, I do basically a CrossFit and Pilates, right? So like it's a little different. But sometimes, I mean, I don't know. You go down there and they tell me to do 200 wall balls. I'm like, no, right? Like I don't want to do that, but I'm going to do
Yeah.
it. And so then I tell myself acceptance. Like that's one of the first, So I'm committed to this thing. I got here. I'm doing this. This is happening. I'm not leaving without doing it. And then how am I going to do it? What are the skills that I have to break this down so that I know that I have the agency to then do this, right? And then that builds my competence, which builds my confidence. So I tell people that it looks like people are really motivated around you all the time. There's something wrong with you if you aren't like rainbows and puppy dogs to go sit on the erg to do 5x2K. And there is nothing wrong with you. Um, Usually well, maybe it's a separate conversation, but often when people are really scared of the workout or they really are lagging on it, it's because they haven't planned when they're going to do it and
Plan.
set their schedule to do that, right? So they haven't created the environment or the structure and the infrastructure to do it. They don't feel good about it either in themselves or the space, right? So when people tell me I'm doing it in the basement next to like paint thinner, I'm like, it has to be right. This isn't Atomic Habits. Like I'm not making this stuff up either. Like it has to be easier and you have to look forward to it a little something. And maybe it's just what you get to do after you're done. I don't know. It depends.
Hmm.
And then I tell my athletes to remove the uncertainty, right? So if the scary bit is that they have no idea what they need to hit, then they need to lower the bar a little and complete the workout, right? Like give themselves the evidence that they completed the workout. If the jump is too high, then you're asking a lot of yourself. And if they took an exam or the masters worked all day, an 8 to 6, and now they're going to do 5 by 2K on the erg at like 7 p.m. without eating dinner, like you're just setting yourself up to blow up on the erg. So they need to set the environment and plan around that. And then they need to adjust it because life happens. Like they're
Yes.
not always going to be perfectly ready to crush on the erg every time. And so that sort of self compassion and pragmatism, I think, is really critical for a master's to be able to do that because you probably got kids and jobs and all the things.
Yes.
So, you know, have some self compassion, adjust when necessary, right? And on a day where you feel really great, yeah, you need to crush that day because you're not going to feel really great most days.
Yeah.
Um, and so, um, that's sort of some of the stuff that I talk to my athletes so that they stay committed. They may
Com
not feel great about it, right? And if we do, I would love to do. I've had a lot of parents ask me to run like a master's clinic that maybe is just on the erg because they want to know the mental skills because they've seen them be so transformational for their athletes. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And we could get a chef and like wine and like it could be so much different if you had like
Uh-huh.
parents and
Uh-huh.
masters. But that's one of the things that I talk to them all the time is we do a purpose. We do a lot of work around their purpose. And so even for masters ergers, why are you doing this? Right. And I know people say that, but like really why? And we have some actual exercises and a process that we help people identify these things. For me, I have spent the time to identify my own personal purpose statement, right? Like drive transformational change. That is what I do. Um, and when I think about my own fitness, like, yes, it's part of my job. Like, I feel like I can't really show up if I can't crush sometimes. But also, I've always said, I really want to be the type of person that if my kids were like, hey, can we run a sprint triathlon tomorrow? I'd be like, okay. As opposed to
Hmm.
like, oh no, like I can't do that.
Yeah.
Like that's the kind of space that I'm in. And so it doesn't have like hard guardrails about my fitness and I have to do this. I'm not training for like right now a half marathon or a race or something that's very regimented, and there's a place for that, and I encourage people to weave those into their training. But we talk about fitness is for life, right? And so if the erg is a component of your wellness, that is great.
Yeah.
And now you can figure out, what does that mean? Maybe these 3 months of the year, I'm going to do this training plan and crush on the erg. And then I'm going to do a triathlon. And then I'm going to do this other thing. And I'm going to erg once or twice a week as cross training for this other thing. And like, you as
Whatever
as
it
a master's, you
is.
can sort of mix it, right? Or you can do the ski erg or whatever. But mix those things up because the monotony is real, right? Like that can be a total killer. And if you're committed to just your wellness and you being on the planet for as long as possible to be with your family and whatever, well, then you have to move the body for the mind, body, soul. You
Hmm.
got to move the body. And so when people sort of zoom out and look at it like that, then it's not a chore, right? Like this is your opportunity to do this thing. And if you're supposed to do 5 by 2K and all you need is just some time to like chill, maybe you're going to do a 10K steady state that day. And like, it's fine. Do that
Yeah.
instead, you know?
Yeah, no,
So,
I love that you said because yeah, motivated is a word actually that I put in here, but I we don't use a lot. I like I don't think if I really committed to the committed word, but I think that is what I tell people a lot of times. Like if you have a plan, whatever it is, and it maybe you're working one-on-one with a coach, or maybe you're just like really seeing all the options you have for this next week, or if you collect the data in details that will give you the numbers to keep going.
mhm,
Like sometimes the change is so minimal. A lot of people actually tell us what it is. They think Ergzone is for the top athletes, which it can be. Most of the top athletes on the erg they use Ergzone because the way they can see the data or manage their
mhm,
workouts. But I tell people, it doesn't matter. Like my mom never rode. I took a rower with me to Brazil. It's on her house. And I told her, sit down and row for 2 minutes.
mhm,
Row for 2 minutes. And the day she did it for 15 minutes because whatever happened, she was so happy.
mhm,
It's like all I want for her to, yeah, is life. She's not gonna be doing any 2K. She had a lot of heart problems, but like just like being here for your kids, for
Hmm.
your grandkids,
Hmm.
and stuff like that. So I love the word committed. I think I'm gonna commit to that
Hmm.
more, in that I'm not trying to be fun. And I love the purpose too, like why you do that. I
Hmm.
ask every day myself, sometimes, like, especially weekends, it's hard for me. And I have literally one of my rooms is full of ergs, like all type of brands and type of workouts. I don't have space anymore. People come here like, what's this? I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna move it out of here. But sometimes you just, like, kids are here. I'm like, no, no, I need to carve the time to do that thing. And I usually follow a plan, because that's what keep me committed.
Hmm.
That's what makes me, oh, I really need to do that. But sometimes, like, okay, let's do something else, but just make sure you
Yeah.
do, so then I can go run. What happened to my kids this weekend? They did a mile run and I went with them. Actually, my daughter crushed me at the end. I don't know what she did that. She speed up. She's so much smaller. I'm like, oh my gosh, Gabriel, something's wrong here. But I love that. So, do you have any favorite success story? I guess we talked so much, so I don't know. Do
Yeah.
you want to throw something
I
there?
have, this is a hard question for me, Tice, because I have so many. So, I mean, we have, and I even asked one of my coaches, like, what would you say? Because there's literally
Yeah,
so many. It's sort of,
yeah,
they just pop out when people ask. So, for context, I tell all the athletes we work, even at the clinics, which when we started the clinics, which are the 2K one in Raleigh is only 3 days long, or at UNC, it's only 3 days long. I was so worried that we weren't going to make enough change for them. Like it's too short. And I'm totally wrong. I was totally wrong. And we've been running it for the last, since I started. We started in 2016. And which is I'm so grateful for having realized this, right? Like we make transformational change happen for the people that we work with for their life. Like I literally tell them my goal is to change your life and I'm going to use rowing to do it. So like stay with me, and then we get there. So it sounds cheesy, but it's true. Like we literally have had an athlete who was just with us in December who was in tears with one of my coaches and her parents saying that like her mindset when she came back from 3 days, one half, one full, one half. That's it. Around the erg was so dramatic that like it's totally changed her rowing experience, which is why we do it, right?
yeah.
Like I would not leave my family for like 6 weeks of the summer if I didn't think I was going to changing these people's lives. So we have them like erg wise. It sort of comes. It depends how fast people come in, right? But we have. I asked one of my coaches like, what was she had a 7:31 girl come in and pull a 7:16 in 2.5 weeks. That's pretty fast. That's like a pretty fast drop for a female 2K. So and that's not. We had an athlete, and my first one that broke seven this summer came in with a 7:12 I think and broke
Okay.
seven for a
So
girl.
it's
So
probably like because it's a mental, right? Because it's a very short time to
yeah.
just like the body to move. It's just like a mental block that unlocked.
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of things. We create the environment that that allows them, right, to risk like that, and we're building it over time. We're enabling them by they're learning these skills, they're practicing them, they're executing, and then we're adding pressure, adding pressure, adding pressure. Boom. Then we hit summer nationals or the 2K erg test, both of which are huge pressure situations, and we build them intentionally that way. We're not like, oh, just on your own time, go take a 2K. No, no, no. Like this is choreographed. Like they come in, they have this very specific warm up. They know the deal. They know it's coming. We sit down, we give the speech. I ask them to raise their hand if they feel fear, and every person raises their hand. They're sitting at attention on the erg. And I'm like, yeah, you do. And don't let it take it from you. And then they put their hand down and we say, go. And it is sick. Like I've had Olympians work with me in the past who were like crying watching some of our erg workouts, being like, why am I?
Yeah.
They came to
Uh-huh.
me and were like, what's happening? I'm like, you are watching. And at the time, these were girls. We just started boys last year. So the couple years ago, this happened. That was so profound for me to see an Olympian have this reaction.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Um, was crying and was like, why am I getting all emotional? And I'm like, you're getting emotional because you've built a relationship with this kid and you are watching transformation happen on the erg. You can't see it on the water. It's not the same, right? On the erg, you can see it. And like the kid got off and was like, I've never done that in my entire life. I've never been able to face it and stay steady. Like I've folded every time, right? And so the coaches and the other athletes are seeing them put it into practice and then execute like that. And they may not do it the next time. Like it's really hard to do that. But that's sort of what we do. And we erg more than any other camp does. And everyone is always like, oh, you don't need to erg, they need to be on the water. And I'm like, yes, they need to row well. They're on the water rowers. However, the erg is a critical piece of rowing well. And their confidence is built more on the erg than anywhere else. And if I want my athletes to feel like fortified to go do really hard things for the rest of their life, then I'm going to put them in the cauldron safely in the beginning and make it harder, right? And as I'm adjusting for every kid, right? So I customize sort of
Uh-huh.
how I talk to each kid. And I'm like, can I push you now, or do I need to let you wait? Like, can I go with this kid or no? Like, are they need some space, right? So we do coach people differently, and so yeah, it is. You need to come see. It is
Yes.
something, and the people tell me like they shouldn't be erging. I'm like, yes, they should. They absolutely should, because they're going to go back to their home or they're going to go college, and then someone's going to be like, yeah, just do 2 by 6K and make sure the second one's faster. And then the kid implodes mentally because they're now a tiny fish in a huge pond. They used to kick everyone's tail in high school, and now they're in college where everyone's really good, and they just blow up
Yeah,
mentally, like they can't
yeah.
handle it, right? And so we do it on purpose.
And masters do too. I actually
Yeah,
know a master from one country, and she said she was so upset because she's so good at her country, but is a very low on the erg. But then when she went to compete with other people, she of course she's not as good. So
yeah,
like, wow, yeah, that's wow, there is room to improvement. That's good. Like if
yeah,
you have the will to beat everybody else on this tiny community, like you just need to learn how to translate to that to the bigger pond. I
right.
guess I like that. I love the environment thing. Like last week I was rowing and cooking in the kitchen, but it's like I told my husband, no, 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 you gotta stop that. I can't deal with that smell. I can't
Yeah,
imagine like the example you give was great. Like the environment makes a big
yeah.
change on the thing. So what's the advice? Do you have advice for someone struggling to stay consistent? I mean, we talk about environment, you talk about the plan, you talk. So is there anything else that you would?
Yeah, so I mean, they really got to figure out why they're doing it.
Why?
Put that in context. They have to be pragmatic. I have people make a pie chart of their time, like literally sleep, eat, play
Yeah,
late, all the things. Make sure you have the sliver for this workout. And if you don't, there are timing things, right? Like this particularly happens if someone's doing a long thing, like when people are training for a marathon or something, or an Ironman. Like I did a half Ironman right before I had kids, and I'm not going to do that again until the kids are out of the house because it's way too much time. I don't have time. I'm just being realistic here, right? Like I cannot work out for 3 hours every day. So, you know, think about your timeline over the calendar year. Like when is the time? Maybe you have a baby or something that like that's probably not a great time right now, right? Like there's just reality here. And then I make the pie chart on the day-to-day level. And then I look at the people's schedule with them and I'm like, okay, so when are you going to do this? Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 6 a.m. before work. Are you actually going to get up at that time? Okay, great. How are you going to make sure you get up at that time? Like all the things, like reduce the barriers so that they can then do it once they figure out the plan. I would tell people that they should do that work that we do in the boathouse around their purpose statement. Like, why do you do this? And how are you going to remember that you do this when it gets really hard? And then literally identifying the obstacles. What are the things that are going to come up that are going to try you or make it really hard for you to do this? When are they going to happen if you can predict them? And what are you going to do about it? So, the data says, and this is not RSR, this is like people studying this, social sciences, when people identify the obstacles ahead of time, they're much more equipped to manage those obstacles. So when people do all of those things, and then I tell them, okay, now you have to have the visual signals. This is from Atomic Habits, right? You have to like put the thing on the refrigerator that's like, this is what I'm doing this. Tell all of your support structure that you're doing this and who's going to help you do it, or at least not sabotage you. Maybe they're not going to help you, but they're not going to, invite
Yep.
you out when they know you have to do that workout. Um, and then I try to find an accountability partner, particularly for the hard ones. Like when we did those AT workouts that are in that advanced plan, that was the day that was a live leaderboard because I knew if everyone knew people are getting on at 9 a.m. Eastern and they're going to race each other, they're going to be like, all right, let's go. And they're all in it and they can see each other's name on the board, right? They know they're in there.
Yes.
So all of those things, this is not specific to us, like
Yes.
everyone knows these things, but it's really important to put all those together. um
Yeah.
yeah
it makes sense. I love the pie chart because it makes sense. It goes with the example I told you. Weekends is the day that in theory I should have more time because I dedicate me less time to Ergzone. But at the same time, is the days that I have a harder time to find more a longer time period for me to do a long workout. So I was like, I decide, no, that's gonna be the day that something's gonna be fast because I know, the kid's gonna be screaming. Like I was doing a workout this week and the kids like talking to me all the time. So if it's a hard workout and I have a specific plan, I'm gonna just get upset because they are taking in, right? I need to stop
Mhm.
now and listen to them and then say no for 500 times or something like that. We have one question. It took me 2 years after college to make it to the senior national team. How do you consult patients and process to our athletes?
Yeah. Hey, Akil. He's the real deal. It's
Yep.
awesome that he's watching this. Thanks for your question. So, great question. So specifically, and I have a lot of athletes now who are out of college, or not a lot. I have a handful, having started in 2016, or I have people who are in the U23 national team sort of space. And then I got to work with Texas women last spring. So one lesson that we do is explaining to people about some statistics. Actually, I explain the least squares regression line, right? Which is basically when you take a scatter plot of data where time is on the x-axis and some performance metric is on the y-axis, so the vertical one. And I explain to them, this is what your training is like. The dots are all over the place. And what you need to do is you need to make sure that if you were to draw a line where the distance between each dot and the line is the smallest. That's where the least squares regression line. And when you get a lot of data, a computer has to do this for you. But if it's scatter plot, you can look at it with you can usually eyeball it sometimes. All you want to do is make sure that the slope is positive, which means you're getting faster over time, right? The performance metric is getting higher over time. It doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be a steep slope where you're getting, and in fact, that's unrealistic at the level you are at, where the people are quite good, right? You're not getting, the improvement is not linear, and it's definitely not exponential going up, right? Where you're just getting faster and faster. And so when I explain that to athletes and say, expect the scatter plot to look random if you're looking at a small sample size. And what you really have to do is make sure that when you get ones that are on the lower end of that scatter plot, they don't derail you, right? People remember the bad workouts. I try not to let them use words like that judge the workout, right? But that's what someone who's not in our program is going to say. Bad workout, a word I bombed. Um, and they don't realize they actually have a bunch that were higher. And so once I explain to them that like they just have to keep doing the workouts, provided that they're injury free, right? That they're in a safe environment, all those things, like we go over all of that. All you care about is that the slope is positive, that you're getting faster over time. And especially as you start to get to the elite levels, it doesn't actually look like that, right? It's more like a stair step where they may plateau or looks like they're plateauing for a long time, and then they have a little bump, and then they're on another stair step. So I try to explain to them like that, like they can't have they can't have an urgency to see improvement every day, right? You want to see it over time. So I just did an alumni interview in the boathouse the other day, actually, with an athlete who's rowing for Mara at UCF, who is a Texas previous to becoming the head coach at UCF. And she said that Mara says all the time, and I love it, we tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in the day and underestimate what we can accomplish in the season or over time. And she's totally right. So zoom out, look at the whole picture, and really focus on all the things that are under your control and doing your best, right? It's marked at the day-to-day level all the time in people's heads where they have one performance that's not on target. And what you really have to do is zoom out and look at the big picture over time. So that's the first thing, is like the context of like how that actually works. And then I would encourage my athletes to focus on all the other things that they do have control over, right? So they do have control over their performance on the erg, yes, but um, the ones that I really like are they doing the mental skill work that they need to be doing? Are they managing their nutrition the way that they need to be managing? Are they managing their recovery? Probably most importantly and most uh, underutilized or the least amount of tension placed on, right? In terms of sleep, body recovery, body work, etc. And do they have all those pieces in place to support their journey to the national team, right? Because the data will show you that when someone has the perception that they have agency, right, that they have control, then their stress and anxiety comes down. Like there's physiological ramifications for that. Their blood pressure comes down, their heart rate may come down, like all of those things, right? It sort of relaxes the systems. And so I make sure all my athletes have a really good understanding of what those things are when things start to feel crazy or they start to panic about their performance, so that then they just focus on the things that they have control under. um, Recovery, sleep, nutrition, mental skills. And then we give them the mental skills. So they're not like, well, what does that mean? What do I do? And I'm like, oh, I'm going to tell you what to do. So hopefully that answers your question. It is a long process. And then finally, Akil, maybe this isn't maybe people don't really want to hear this, but sometimes I worry about some people who are still training, um, because it's hard to know when to stop. First, in my experience, when I have observed people, sometimes it looks like it's hard to know when to stop. So I would just say, um, I call them your personal board of directors, right? These are the people that really love you and really care about you and are going to give you really great advice, to make sure you have the right coaches in place who can be very pragmatic and be like, yeah, you got room to go. And here's how we're going to get there, as opposed to, like, I don't know, someone who maybe wants to become a lawyer or a doctor or something else, right? And they're sort of still training, and maybe they're not going to be able to get there. And so I do worry about the transition there, for a lot of elite athletes. And so the other principle we really focus on, you didn't ask about this, but I'm going to tell you because now I'm here, is right away the first lesson we talk about how their athletic performance is not correlated to their personal value, like their value on the planet. And yeah, we just try to really drill that in them. Like, I love those kids, whether they crush it on the erg or not, right? Like, these are really important people with a lot of people who care about them. And this is just an opportunity for them to grow through using the sport of rowing so they can go on and do really great things when rowing's done.
Oh, I don't know if you answered his question, but I think that was amazing. And I love this that you said this first thing about the value. It doesn't define your value on the planet.
Yeah.
As a mom, it's always the things you think about, especially dealing with a lot of people who want sports. I want the kids to always be, what is it? Just every kid that I come up like with, like in contact with, to understand how sports is good for it. At the same time, you want them to push them to be brave and do their best, but how to really separate this, how you perform in there is not, it doesn't define if you have value or not. You're still important for other things. This is
Hmm.
just one good thing you can do for yourself and, well, whoever else. I love that. I feel like I have ideas that, like, we should talk about those things in another time, like specifically about it, because I think a lot of people could benefit from it. And I keep thinking about from the parents' point of view, that are like, let's talk about those indoor rowers that have kids right now. They never thought, can my kid go somewhere? So, and again, of course, I always use my personal experience because that's how your things comes up, right? From your experiences. But I keep looking about, I will never pressure my kids to go and get a scholarship for rowing necessarily. That was never my dream. But if they get there, like, how would you do that? So I can imagine from all the other parents out there that have ergs on their houses and they use that for their own health. Sometimes they're not even ever doing a race or something like that. So if they find, oh, maybe my kid will like that. I have a teenager, a preteen that is interested in that. So what the transition happens? Maybe that's another way we can talk in the future, like to give them that information that they may not have. We'll see. So just to close everything here, so people can learn more about you. I mean, from your Instagram, we're gonna have your website on the Erg Zone plans and stuff. We're gonna have the link as well for. Is there anything else? Like, I think those are the places they should go, right? And
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And there's at the bottom of the website, there's a way people can join, like, our listserv. We usually only tell people programs are coming, or like really we don't send a lot of
Hmm.
emails if people are worried about their inbox. So we have that, and then we are on Instagram. And if anyone does want to get into the Boathouse, which is where we basically have this library of technical videos, some workouts, a lot of our mental skills, all these interviews with kids who are in college about what it's like and how they're managing the hard. We aim to do that in the next year. So let me know, because I'd love to have some pilot folks in there to give me some feedback on the content before we launch that.
Awesome. Before that, we can also create something on Orgzone, like a announcement later, asking people if they're interested. So like everybody who will open the app will see that one time.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I don't send a lot of emails. I don't like to spam people. I like to make them informed, but I won't be pushing them on things like, hey, here's it,
Yeah.
it, move along, go do whatever you need on your life. So any final words? I love this, Holly,
Yeah.
more than,
Yeah.
my whole idea when I think about talking to you was I want people to know about what she's doing, why she is, her things are on her
I
zone,
appreciate
but it's so much
that.
more. Any final words?
Just
And you don't have.
I do have one, Tice, for you. I'm thinking about Akila's question now. Akila, my email is holly@readysetrow.com. We could have a total jam session on this because I love thinking about this. But um, I'm thinking about an athlete that I worked with extensively through the camp system, is now in college at a really high performing school, and she got into a really hard situation with lineup selection, right? Like she was disappointed, and rightfully so. Like it was tough. It was really really tough, and all of those national team athletes are in that, right? They're in the cauldron every day. They're on the line every day with selection, and one thing that I felt like we could grab hold of when it just felt like she was at the bottom, right? The bottom of the barrel, just like scraping the bottom, like working so hard and just did not have all the other things coming to her that you sort of look for in our sport. And this could be applied to a master's too, was just working so hard and just not seeing the numbers that they were expecting to see. Um, I did ask her to spend some time writing. I know we talked about the why some, Tice, but I asked her specifically to write, tell me what this opportunity or this challenge is an opportunity for. I didn't say that quite correctly. I asked her to write, you're in this is a very hard situation. We acknowledge that. And I said, what does this mean you have the opportunity to build in yourself
Hmm.
because of this very hard situation? And so I was able to get her to identify that this really stinks and it's so hard. And here are the three things that I am going to mindfully and intentionally try to build, even though I'm in this like really hard place. Right. And so for like a master's athlete who's trying to do this training plan, maybe, and I don't know, maybe they're dealing like I lost a parent last year, right? So maybe they're dealing with this other thing that's really hard. So what is this the opportunity for me to build through this really hard space? It was an opportunity for me to build my capacity to find the time to find the feelings and then also do all the things that I needed to do, right? To balance that, like I'm going to get through this. And so for a national team athlete who is struggling with not seeing the results or just not getting the lineups that they want, I would say, what is this an opportunity for you to build for yourself that will serve you later? So I asked the athlete, like, what do you want to be 10 years from now? Because you're not going to be rowing 15 years from now, probably.
Uh-huh.
So what do you
Uh-huh.
what do you want to be doing? And then she would tell me, and I was like, great. If you want to be in this like field of work, here are the skills you need to be great at this job. How can you build those right now? And so that really helped her, I think, sort of see why she was doing it. Like she had been on the team before, right? She wants to make the crew, to make NCAAs, to win NCAAs. Well, that's now gone. So
Well,
why,
yeah.
and you're still having to train from them. So what are you doing for yourself? Why is this a benefit for you to sort of push through, provided you're not injured
Hmm.
and sick and your mental health is there and all that stuff. So
No,
anyway, just
I love
just a
that. I
last
love that, and I
thought.
think resonate with a bunch because again, we're not talking like Ergzon goes from the top athletes on those sports to someone that just wanna get 30 minutes in every day. So that's what gonna keep you moving, and how do you see the progress when the progress doesn't look like you on the top of the leaderboard?
Hmm.
That's me.
Hmm.
Like I'm not on the top of the leaderboard, so like that's not my motivation. That's not what keeps me coming back. So I love that. Like what? the value of this long term,
Hmm.
like what can you learn about everything.
Hmm.
Well, on my side, I guess what I gonna have to do, I'm gonna have to come to a camp. And what's the youngest age again? Will you do 14?
So Elite and Foundations is 14. We have had a 13, so if someone has a 13-year-old, then reach out to me and we'll see what we can do. They have to be a very mature 13 year
Uh-huh.
old. And then the same for the clinics, but I did have masters come to when I went and worked at the Texas Rowing Center years ago. So we haven't done a masters only clinic, but I could. So again,
Yeah, we can think
maybe
about
Erg
it.
Zone and Ready Set Row teams up and does a masters only clinic
That
or
that
something. But
that would be fun. But I'm more thinking about like in a few years from now, I'm gonna send my daughter,
oh
like
yeah, oh
but
yeah,
it's
yeah.
more like even if she doesn't want to row, I feel like she's just for the mental
Yeah.
thing. Because
Well, so
I
you could get her in the boathouse, Tice, today. You could get her in the boathouse and you could even be the member and so you could see it all and
uh-huh.
share it with her and do it with her. So
Oh, I, I
yeah.
I love that. I love that because I do think I can't remember if it was you or Krista that made me cry during the
Yeah.
event I went to, but you probably would. You probably will make me cry. I would just say right now on the camp, and I think that's fine. Like that's how you
It
learn, right?
was an opportunity for growth for you, Tice.
It is. It is. Awesome, Holly. Thank you so much for the
Yeah.
time, for your time. I loved our chat. Everybody who came in and went. This will be live on Instagram, so people can always watch. Will be on YouTube too, so people can go and like stop and come back later. Um, and I appreciate your time, everybody's time.
Thanks, Tice.
I love everyone.
Thanks. It was
Okay,
great to see you.
great to see you. I hope we'll see you in
Yeah.
person soon. Okay,
Thanks.
bye. Bye.
Bye.
Have a good day.
You too.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I will see you next week for another live. Bye bye.